Hey guys, good afternoon. Hopefully you're having a good day. It's awful with the rain, not being able to get outside right now. So I am going to read chapter 7. I'm going to start chapter 7. It's one of the longest chapters in the book, so this is going to take us a little bit of time. But chapter 7 is called Uninvited Brothers. Omri was not supposed to ride his bicycle in the road, but then he wasn't supposed to ride it on the pavement either. Not fast at any rate, so he compromised. He rode it slowly on the pavement as far as the corner, then bumped off the curb and went like the wind. The hardware shop was still open. He bought the seed tray and the seeds and was just paying for them when he noticed something. On the seed packet, under the word marrow, was written another word in brackets, squash. So, one of the three sisters was marrow, and on impulse he asked the shopkeeper, "Do you know what maize is?" "Maize, son, that's sweet corn, isn't it? Have you some seeds of that?" Outside, standing by Omri's bicycle, was Patrick. I think I skipped a page. Oh, there we go. Outside, standing by Omri's bike, was Patrick. Hi, I saw you going in. What did you get?" Omri showed him. "More presents for the Indian?" Patrick asked sarcastically. "Well, sort of, if what?" "If I can keep him long enough, till they grow." Patrick stared at him, and Omri stared back. "I've been to Yap's," said Patrick. "I bought you some things." "Yeah, what?" said Omri hopefully. Slowly, Patrick took his hand out of his pocket and held it in front of him and opened the fingers. In his palm lay a cowboy on a horse with a pistol in one hand pointing upward, or what would have been upward if it hadn't been laying on its side. Omri looked at it silently, then he shook his head. "I'm sorry, I don't want it." "Why not? Now you can play a proper game with the Indian." "They'd fight." "Isn't that the whole idea? They might hurt each other." There was a pause, and Patrick leaned forward and asked very slowly and loudly, "How can they hurt each other? They're made of plastic." "Listen," said Omri, and then stopped, and he started again. "The Indian isn't plastic. He's real." Sounds like it was too much of a secret to be able to keep. He finally started to tell Omri. Patrick heaved a deep, deep sigh and put the cowboy back in his pocket. He'd been friends with Omri for years, ever since they started school. They knew each other very well. Just as Patrick knew when Omri was lying, he also knew when he wasn't. The only trouble was that this was a non-lie he couldn't believe. "I want to see him," he said. Omri debated with himself. He somehow felt that if he didn't share his secret with Patrick, their friendship would be over. He didn't want that. And besides, the thrill of showing his Indian to someone else was something he could not do without for much longer. "Okay, come on." Going home, they broke the law even more, riding on the road, and with Patrick on the crossbar. They went around the back way by the alley in case anyone happened to be looking out the window. Omri said he wants a fire. "I suppose we can't make one indoors." You could on a tin plate, like for indoor fireworks," said Patrick. Omri looked at him. "Let's collect some twigs." Patrick picked up a twig about a foot long, and Omri laughed. "That's no good. They've got to be tiny twigs like this," and he picked up some slivers off the privet hedge. "Does he want the fire to cook on?" asked Patrick slowly. "Yes." "Then that's no use. A fire made of those would burn out in a couple seconds." Omri hadn't thought of that. "What you need," said Patrick, "is a little ball of tar. That burns for ages, and you could put the twigs on top to look like a real campfire." "That's a brilliant idea." "I know where they've been tarring a road, too," said Patrick. "Come on, let's go." "No, why not?" "I don't believe in him yet. I want to see." "All right, but first I have to give this stuff to my dad." There was a further delay when his father at first insisted on Omri filling the seed tray with compost and planting the seeds in it then and there. But when Omri gave him the corn seed as a present, he said, "Well, thanks. Oh, all right. I can see you're bursting to get away. You can do the planting tomorrow before school." Omri and Patrick rushed upstairs. At the top, Omri stopped cold. His bedroom door, which we always shut automatically, was wide open. And just inside, crouching side by side on their backs to him, were his brothers. Or with their backs to him were his brothers. They were so absolutely still that Omri knew they were watching something. He couldn't bear it. They had come into his room without permission. They had seen his Indian. Now they would tell everybody. His secret, his precious secret, his alone to keep or share, was a secret no more. Something broke inside of him, and he heard himself scream, "Get out of my room! Get out of my room!" Both boys spun around. "Shut up, you'll frighten him," said Adil at once. Gillen came back in to look for his rat, and he found it. He saw that this absolutely fabulous little house you've made, and he called me back in to look at it. So they weren't actually watching the Indian or the horse. They were looking for his pet rat. Omri looked at the floor. The seed tray with the longhouse, now nearly finished, had been moved into the center of the room. It was that they had been looking at. A quick glance all around showed no sign of Indian or horse, but Gillen's tame white rat was on his shoulder. "I can't get over it," Adil went on. "How on earth did you do it without using any glue or anything? It's all done with tiny threads and pegs. Look, Gillen, it's all made of real twigs and bark. It's absolutely terrific," he said. There's Omri bursting in on his brothers in his room, looking at the longhouse. There's Omri and Patrick in the back there. With such awestruck admiration in his voice that Omri felt ashamed. I didn't," he began, but Patrick, who had been gaping at the longhouse in amazement, gave him a heavy nudge that nearly knocked him over. "Yes," said Omri. "Well, would you mind leaving now? And take the rat. You're not to let him in here. This is my room, you know." "And this is my magnifying glass, you know," echoed Gillen, but he was obviously too overcome with admiration to be angry at Omri with Omri for pinching it. Pinching means taking or stealing it. He was using it now to examine the fine details of the building. "I knew you were good at making things," he said, "but this is uncanny. You must have fingers like a fairy to tie those witchy little knots. What's that?" he asked suddenly. They'd all heard it, a high, faint whinny coming from under the bed. Omri was galvanized into action. At all cost, he must prevent them from finding out now. He flung himself on his knees and pretended to grope under the bed. "It's nothing, only that little clockwork dolphin I got in my Christmas stocking," he burbled. "I must have wound it up and it suddenly started clicking. And that's what they do. That's how they do it. It's quite creepy at times, and all of a sudden they start clicking." By this time he leaped up again and was almost pushing the two older boys out of the room. I'm going to leave off right there. We'll see what next week looks like. If I get some time to read, I will definitely do it. For right now, like I said, we're getting close to halfway through the book. Not quite there. I'm on page 84. I'm going to leave off right there. I will try and get a couple of readings in next week as time permits. You guys, hopefully you're staying in touch with your teachers, doing some of the work packets that you've gotten, and taking some time off to rest too. So see you guys soon. Have a good weekend. Stay safe.